Hey everybody, welcome once again to Retro Wrestling with Gene Jackson. We are here for episode number 25. That's right, 25 of these in the bag so far. And this week, I'm excited. I've got a special guest, a new acquaintance and business partner that I'm excited to be working with. So right now, everybody join me in welcoming Christopher Pelton. Chris, how's it going, man?
Gene, things are going great, my friend. Let me thank you. Let me start off by saying thank you for having me on. I appreciate your time.
Yeah.
It was great meeting you a couple weeks ago when we were in Philly. And let's just get it out of the way, guys.
Look at that.
This book is absolutely amazing, and I'm not saying that because I published it. I'm saying that because Gene and Doug Gilbert did an amazing job capturing Eddie's life. And this book, like if you guys saw The Dark Side of the Ring a couple weeks ago, pick up the book because the book's got so much more. I mean, the episode was fine. The book's got so much more. So if you're a fan of Eddie's, fan of that period of time in wrestling, the beginning of ECW, all of that stuff, you got Gene, my hat is off to you, sir, because you did an amazing job working with Doug on that. And you guys put out a great book. So thank you for trusting me to get that story out.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Like, I had a great time working with Doug on that book, and we're super proud of it. But then, Doug's seen it before I did. You shipped the books to him for virtual signing, and man, as soon as he had him in his hand, he called me. He's like, "Gene, you're gonna love this book." He said, "Man, these things look awesome." And Doug's not the kind of mince words. Like, if he didn't like them, he'd have been like, "I don't know."
I certainly got that impression. Yes.
Yeah. So I couldn't wait. And so when we got to Philadelphia, that was the first time I actually held one in my hand.
Oh, nice.
There, and I was like, man, you ain't kidding, man. These things look absolutely awesome. So, team effort here, man. If you can, you can write as good a book as you want, but then if it looks like shit, then, people aren't going to take it seriously, but you can have a beautiful looking book. And if there's nothing inside worth reading. So I'm really happy to be teaming up with you, man. I was proud that, you announced this week that I've signed on to be part of the team there at THC Ringside. We're going to be working a lot together in the future. And man, I am super, super excited to be on board.
Excellent. Excellent. We, this year we've been expanding THC Limitless, my company. We've been expanding our offerings. We started off 3 years ago, primarily as a horror publisher. I had written a couple of books, sold okay, nothing spectacular. I wasn't breaking any sales records. But I was submitting to magazines at the same time. And, rejection. And then boom, 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 I got some hits. So I decided, I was like, hey, you know what? Maybe I'll try to do a magazine, help some people who have never been published before. And I'm thinking, all right, I'll put out an open call. If I get like 10 submissions, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
Because I'm nobody. At this point, I like I said, a couple of books, they sold maybe 100 copies total. So, I'm not Stephen King or anybody. So I put out the open call, and within 3 weeks, I've got 130 submissions.
Wow.
And it is horror from all over the world. Like, it is amazing how much it differs from Australia to Nigeria to Austria to Canada, and just all of these amazing stories. Now, the thing about print, especially with a magazine, it's very expensive.
Yeah.
I paid $500 for 150 copies, print copies of the magazine. Sold some, gave some away. Sent some out to some of the people that I was working with at the time, and they were using them, they were getting them out there as well. And then I said, well, that went pretty well. So we switched over to a digital format, much cheaper. Yeah. And we did 7 issues total digitally. During our first year, we published 26 books.
Wow.
Every week from May of 2023 to beginning of January 2024, we had a new release out every week.
Wow.
Never missed a deadline. Never, no major printing issues or none of that. Like we got lucky on because sometimes Amazon and places like that, they can cause delays, but we hit a good streak and we put out a lot of great books. Some very talented authors, and I was lucky to work with some amazing artists. And I found slowly but surely, a team started to come together. long story short, that whole situation ended up getting turned sideways, but it allowed me to open up my eyes to other possibilities.
Right.
Because I was limiting myself to just the one genre because that's what I loved. I loved horror, so I limited myself to that. But then I started meeting some new people, and they were talking about doing books of poetry. They were talking about doing nonfiction work. They were talking about doing, alternative history. So there was a lot of projects that these folks were working on, and they were looking for a home.
Yeah.
So started THC. Now, it wasn't intentional. Believe it or not, it wasn't intentional. The name of the show, the name of the podcast, when I started, it was The Horror Connection.
Right.
So that's what it was. The Horror Connection. We talked to people, blah, blah, blah. And then about a year into it, I'm looking at it one day and I'm like, son of a bitch. So, it's funny because, I live in the state of Illinois. Marijuana is legal here in the state of Illinois. Hopefully we're getting that all across the country because folks, I watch a lot of, when I'm working, I have like stuff on in the background. And I watch a lot of grownups making terrible life decisions because of alcohol and stuff. And I'm like, potheads don't act like that.
Yeah.
Unless we're down to like the last Hershey bar, we're not fighting over anything.
Right.
So, so it took like a year until it dawned on me that it was THC. So we kind of switched branding a little bit. And now we have THC Papers, which publishes our poetry books, our horror books, all that stuff. And then I started THC Ringside because I started talking to some of the boys. Mm-hmm. I had a person I was working with who was very, very gracious in introducing me to some interesting people. And then they subsequently introduced me to some people and so on and so forth. And the first person that I got to talk to was Bill Eadie. Now, when I first got on the phone with Bill, I told him, I said, Bill, I'm going to mark out for about 10 seconds. I was like, Demolition to this day is still my favorite tag team of all time. It's them and the New Age Outlaws. So I was like, just the fact that I'm talking to you, I said, let me thank you. I said, because my childhood would not have been the same without you. Up on my back shelf here, hard to see, but I still have my Hasbro Axe and Smash.
Nice.
From years and years and years ago. So big Demolition fan, was thrilled to work with Bill. His book is still in the process of being written, but from what I've seen so far, going to be amazing. And then, folks started reaching out, and then I got hooked up with Doug, and that's how you and I got introduced.
Yeah.
And, you guys sent me the manuscript for the Eddie book. And I was, I remember watching Eddie in NWA in the late 80s and thinking, he doesn't look like because I grew up in Connecticut. So I'm Vince McMahon, I'm in the WWF land, and looking at Eddie and being like, he doesn't look like a wrestler, but God damn it, there's something about him.
Yeah.
That just, you can't escape it. Like when Eddie was on TV, you just couldn't turn away. So when Doug and you came to us with the book, I was like, hell yeah, dude. Cause I want to know more, and that's the beauty of this whole process for me is I'm getting to talk to people who were influential in the business from the 60s, the 70s, all the way through. And the stories are amazing and the people are amazing. And one of the things that I've found that I really like is that most of the boys that I've worked with, humblest people you've ever met.
Yeah.
And I've dealt with writers, horror writers and stuff who you're just putting out their first book and have this huge ego about themselves. And then I talked to somebody like Bill, who's traveled the world, who was, a champion everywhere he went, who wrestled Andre the Giant and, has all these amazing stories. And Bill's just one of the nicest guys you'd ever want to talk to.
Yeah.
So, for me, it's been great because, I grew up watching wrestling. These guys contributed to my childhood. So the least I can do is preserve their stories and their history to share with other fans, because the industry has changed. I think everybody will agree to that. We're not where we were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, so on and so forth. Next 10 years, we'll still have professional wrestling. We don't know what it'll look like. but it'll still be here. Yeah. But people like Eddie, they help pave that path. That hardcore ECW, that all of that stuff that came out of Philly, Eddie was integral in that. So I was very, very honored to be able to work with you guys and meeting Doug, and Doug's just a good guy, man. So I'm kind of rambling on. So it's weird for me to be on this side of the conversation because usually I'm on that side of the conversation. Right. So go ahead.
I know that feeling because here I've been plugging the book. Like Bob Smith from Pro Wrestling Illustrated formerly had me on recently as interview me, and I've got all these offers to go on and be the interviewee instead of the interviewer. And it is an odd feeling.
It's a little strange, right?
Yeah, man, it is. So we'll back up here. I do want to say I'm super excited to read Bill Eadie's book. Bill Eadie essentially had 3 Hall of Fame careers, right? He was the Mongols. Yep. And then he went on to be the Masked Superstar, which was a Hall of Fame character in and of itself. And then when most people think, all right, well, he's at the end of his road, he's fixing to wrap it up, he goes and has a whole other Hall of Fame career as freaking Demolition.
Yeah.
And one of the most intelligent people you'll ever meet in your life.
Oh, absolutely. High school teacher, well respected by everybody in the business, in where he lives, where, the schools. Bill's been married for 50 years. Him and his wife have been married, which in this business is remarkable.
Yeah.
But I'm going to show you, Bill sent me a ton of pictures that we're going to use in the book, but I want to show you something that always cracks me up every time I see it. Okay. So you get this best here. This is Bill and the Mighty Igor.
Yes.
In Charlotte, doesn't say when, but Charlotte Coliseum. Now, that's the sit-out clothesline. Bill's famous for the sit-out clothesline. Now, here's Bill and Andre. And Bill's a big dude.
Yes.
But Andre was just Andre, it's like, it's the same move, but Bill looks like a child next to Andre. So, he has been absolute delight to work with. I love talking to Bill. I love hearing the stories. The book that we're doing with him covers the Mongols and the Masked Superstar period. We stop right before Demolition. WWE, I guess, may or may not have some ideas. Yeah. They just signed them to the Legends contract. Still trying to figure out how that's going to affect us. Not with our current book, because he actually told them, he was like, for future books and everything under this contract, that's fine. He's like, but I already gave them my word that we were doing this book with them. So if that's a problem, then I'm not going to sign the contract. And I was like, holy crap. Like that blew me away, because it's like, he doesn't really know me. I mean, we spent time talking and everything and working on the book together, but to go to the WWE and say, if you don't okay this, I'm not going to sign your Legends deal. Shit, man. I mean, that's a stand-up guy right there. Exactly. That's a man of his word.
Exactly. Yeah. And by all accounts of everybody I know that's ever known him, that's the story you get from everybody. Like there's not any bad, like most people, you can find somebody that's got some bad stories about somebody, they're like,
not Bill.
He was a prick to me. I can't find anybody that's got a bad story about Bill Eadie. So.
Not one. So,
really cool.
Really says a lot about him. He is a gentleman and one of the just classiest people I've had the pleasure of working with. So.
Well, you're surrounding yourself with good people. You talked about Eddie. A lot of people, depending on their age range, but I'm like 47. So people of my age, a lot of people either discovered him in, Bill Watts UWF, or they called him in like NWA or in Memphis. And so they know hot stuff Eddie Gilbert, but you mentioned like he doesn't come off like a WWE guy. A lot of people are surprised to learn in this book and on the Vice special that he was in the WWE.
Right.
And, it was there when he broke it. So a lot of people don't know the story of the car wreck, of him breaking his neck. There's so many interesting facets of Eddie's career.
Sure.
But to me, what you brought up a moment ago, the most fascinating thing to me is Eddie was always a few years ahead of the business. He was always out in front. And like you said, we were at that event in Philly a couple of weeks ago, the TWA reunion, and him and Mick Foley. To me, Joel Goodhart gets all the credit in the world for booking those shows and bringing those guys together. But those guys, that's where ECW started. That series of matches with Eddie Gilbert and Cactus Jack is where it all began. And, hey, Sabu and Sandman, all those guys, they played their role. They were, pioneers. But, those guys set it in motion.
Absolutely.
And, I'm super proud to be able to help tell that story.
Oh yeah. They, and speaking of that show, I do want to thank Joel. He was kind enough to invite us out. He got us set up with a table, and, we were able to sell, our books. We were able to meet a lot of folks, had some interesting conversations, maybe made some deals. It was a very productive time, but Joel put on a great show. I had a great time. His first live wrestling show I've been to in years. So that was really nice. And, it was nice to be there with people who, I've been talking with, like over this kind of stuff for the last, 5 or 6 months, to actually put, handshakes and, hey, so that was really cool. So thank you to Joel and, for getting that set up. And, I had a really good time, and, it was great to see Doug and Tommy in the ring, especially with the big surprise.
Yes. Which, I mean, that was great. The tie-in there, because I never asked Doug and Tommy. I was like, I don't know who the partner is. I want to be surprised. And they're like, okay, that's fine. And so, we talked about this on Doug and Tommy's podcast, but before the show, let me back up just a little bit. So Joel had said on a couple of podcasts, even in our podcast, Doug and Tommy's too, Joel said, the partner is going to be someone who is not at the convention, but they're just going to show up for the show.
Right.
So we're back there in the dressing room, and I see little Guido walking around, and I grab Tommy and go, hey, it's going to be little Guido, right? Like, Shane's going to bring out Guido. We're going to battle the FBI. And Tommy's like, yeah, you figured it out, Gene. You got it. It's going to be Guido. I was like, I'll be damn. And so I was like, well, that's going to be cool. And then I left the dressing room and come out there. And that's actually when I was out there, hanging out in the lobby with you guys, where you selling the books.
Right.
And so I never went back there again. And so we're sitting there, and then Guido comes out in that other match. And I was like, well, surely not going to bring Guido out twice.
Right.
And then when the music hit, and here comes Pitbull, I'm like, oh shit, Chris has got 2 guys in this match. 3 essentially, if you include Tommy. But that was wild. And of course, then when you put that history of Shane and Pitbull and the neck injury, and man, what a story for that match, right?
We Gary had told me like 3 months ago what was happening. And he's like, you have to keep, he's like, you cannot, he's like, this is, nobody knows. He's like, there's like 5 people who know. I'm like, all right. So I kept it locked in. I talked to Joel, and I explained to Joel, I was like, look, the book will be there. We'll figure out the best way to present it and everything like that. But I was actually lying to people at the convention because I had his book up on the table. And they're like, oh yeah, it really sucked that he couldn't make it. And I'm like, yeah, man. I said, I talked to him like a week ago, and he was having something going on, like some medical thing. And he's like, he wasn't going to be able to travel and blah, 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 blah. And I'm just sitting there fucking lying to people because I know what's about to happen.
Yeah.
And, like I said, a couple of people knew, but for the most part, they did an excellent job keeping him under wraps. He didn't get in. He messaged me when he got off the plane, and it was like 5 o'clock or something like that. So they took him from the airport pretty much straight to the arena, and then didn't even let the poor guy eat his lunch. He ended up eating his lunch after the match when he was sitting out at the table with us. So speaking of Gary, if you don't mind.
Oh, please do. That's
this one, the Pitbull Unleashed. Gary and Keith Davison got together. Gary and I did all the recordings together. We talked, a lot. Like we probably spent 12 to 15 hours on the phone, just talking about, how he got started, talking about Anthony, talking about, the Shane, the thing with Shane, the whole thing. And when we wrote the book, when Kevin wrote the book, he sent it to me and I read it and I was like, this is great, because this does what I want these books to do, which is to humanize the guys. Because everybody knows Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert. Everybody knows the Pitbull Gary Wolfe. But who's Eddie Gilbert? Who's Gary Wolfe? And I sent the manuscript over to Gary, and he called me on the phone. And he's like, brother, he's like, this book is not anything like I thought it was going to be. He's like, but I love it. He's like, you made me seem humble. And I'm like, you're a human being just like the rest of us, dude. And that, for me, that's the whole thing, is I want people to understand, they're not superheroes. These guys and gals who go out there and do what they do, they're human beings just like the rest of us, so they seem larger than life, and that's great. They should be, but they're human too. They go through shit. They have, we all have gone through shit in our lives. And, so Gary was great. The cover art was actually done by a friend of mine, Anna Zayden. She's an actress and musician and artist.
Cool.
So she did the Pitbull for me, and Gary was like, "Oh, that's so cool." I'm like, "Right on, brother." And Todd Gordon was nice enough to write a foreword for us, and Missy Hyatt contributed a little bit to the book as well. And so that was really cool. It was nice to work with them. Todd was great, and I actually got to talk to him and Missy at the show, and that was very cool. So that's it worked out really well. But it was weird because everybody was buying Doug's book, because Doug was, you guys were right next to it, right next to me. So everybody's buying Doug's book, and they're like, "Oh, Gary." So a couple people picked it up, and I'm sitting there thinking, man, wait until he comes out. Wait until I'm like, and we moved a bunch after he came out. So
to your point, like 5 minutes after we've met each other for the first time in person, I come over to your table, because we met over by Doug's table, and I walked over to your table, and I go, "Oh, cool, Pitbull Gary Wolfe, that's awesome." And I go, "Is he not going to be here this weekend?" And you go, "I don't know." You can tell there was this moment where you're like, "I don't want to lie to this dude."
Well, because I
can't tell him.
Because I'm like, wait, does Gene? Because I knew, because Doug knew, Doug and Tommy knew. So I'm like, did they tell Gene? Does Gene know? I don't know if I can tell Gene, because I told Gary I wouldn't tell anybody. Yeah. So but I didn't know if Tommy and Doug had told you. So.
I'm sure if I'd asked, they would have, but I told them early on. I was like, don't tell me. It'll be fun. I miss those days. And that was one of the great things about ECW. They'd have those surprises, all the time. And somebody pop up that you expect. Like, man, I want to feel like a kid again. I want to be surprised. So don't tell me. Yeah. So it worked out great, because like I said, he had not set foot in the dressing room when I walked out of there. So I never even knew he was there until he comes to that curtain. I was like, "Oh shit, he's here! Look at this!" He hit me, and like, they're in the same match, and he's been under selling both sides of books.
I'm back here selling books. Like, come on, guys, let's go.
But it was super cool, because like after the match, me and Tommy are sitting back there with Shane Douglas, and Shane's telling us the whole story of the injury and the way the crowd reacted. Because he was talking about, like the white heat of like, it wasn't that like murder, like it got quiet, because like everybody knew, when he grabbed the halo. And so I can't wait to read the book. I've heard Shane's version now, and I can't wait to read the book and hear Gary's perspective on all that, because I know how scary that must have all been for him. Like, it could have been the end of his career, because it was what's funny. And that's what I was talking to Shane about, because so when this angle went on, I was in college and Booneville, Mississippi, and we had to wait up till 1:00 in the morning to watch it on Sports South. Oh, wow. And so we'd sit up, me and like 5 other dudes in the dorm would sit up and watch ECW. And, the guys were like, we were just kind of starting to get smart to it around, this is what, 95, 96, whatever it was. I think it was 96.
Right.
And he comes out with the halo on, and these guys are like, it's all bullshit. This is all an angle, And I'm like, they zoomed the camera, and I'm like, hey, there's screws in his freaking head. You don't screw a halo in his guy's head for an angle. Like, he got his neck broke. And they're like, I don't know, man. And so to hear, Shane tell about it, I can't wait to hear Gary's side of it. And wild time in wrestling back then, man. It was so cool. Like for years, I have always wanted to go to the ECW arena. So there were so many cool, like I wouldn't take anything for that weekend to get to go to the ECW arena and hang out with Doug and Tommy and meet all these people that I met and everything, man. And just so cool. Like
it was a fun time.
I'll never forget it.
It was a really fun time. We've got a show coming up, the middle of next month, middle of June. There's a show happening in Massachusetts. I want to say Springfield.
Oh.
And we'll be there with the books, or I'll be there with the books. And Glenn Osborne will be with me.
Oh, nice.
Glenn, I was familiar with Glenn's work, and I saw one day that he was on Facebook. So I just shot him a message. I was like, hey man, and told him who I am, what I do. And he was like, oh, that sounds really interesting. And so we got to talking, and, him and I are doing a book. And so he's going to come out with me to that show in June. And then there's going to be another one in October down near Tampa. And I think Gary's going to be at that one. So I got to talk to him. But I think Gary will be coming to that one.
Cool.
So yeah. And then by then we'll have, let's see, Wolfie's book will be out. Bill's book will be out. Robin's book will be out. So there's a lot in the pipeline right now.
Well, cool. I'm hoping I can make it some more of these things.
Oh, absolutely.
Me and Doug were talking about the other day about, he's like, well, hopefully we can do like some more appearances and signings and different things like that. And I was like, yeah, man, absolutely. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Cause I mean, the book sold amazingly well there at the,
doing great.
You didn't leave with any, did you?
I left with 3.
There you go.
Yeah, we have moved over 200 copies so far in the last 3 weeks. So I'm really happy with how it's going. People want to know the story. We timed it specifically so it would come out around the time of the Dark Side of the Ring episode. That's the whole thing, and it's one of the things I like about doing stuff like this now, more than just like traditional book publishing, is if I want to put out a horror book, the best time to put it out is in September, October.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much the only tie-in. But with these books, well, they were doing the episode on Eddie. Well, there's a perfect time to release that book. Oh, Gary's coming back as a surprise, in Philly for this show. Yeah. There's a perfect time to release his book. So I get the opportunity to tie into, events that are happening.
Absolutely.
The event we're doing with Robin, that's going to be her last convention appearance. Oh. So her book will be ready and it'll be available there. So anytime I can work stuff in, so it'll be a relevant date. That's what I try to do, because that helps build the hype for it. So
yeah. And the great thing about wrestling is, if there's not something going on, you can create something that.
It is true. It is true.
You can get on the phone with somebody if they see an opportunity, you can get them to work with you, and you can create an opportunity. So that's really cool. And as you were mentioning earlier about, how you've been able to network with all these different wrestlers. That's one good thing about the wrestling business. Like, it thrives on networking. That's Absolutely. How all these guys got bookings. That's how they get, to different territories back in the day and everything. So, and they're all pretty good about wanting to help each other out. So, they'll be like, hey, meet this guy. He's got a good story, or he would be interested.
Absolutely.
And so they're more than happy to spread the word.
I was sitting at the table that Saturday night, and Angel Medina came over. And we got to chatting for a little bit, and I was like, "Hey, man," I'm like, you had a fun run in ECW, as one of the Baldies. I'm like, you want to, here's my info. Give me a call. We'll talk about doing a book. And then he was like, "Oh, that's really cool." He's like, "I'll take a look at it." I'm like, "All right." And then like a half an hour later, he comes back and he's got Homicide with him, which was funny because I had just been talking about Homicide the week before. It's like, "Oh man, I'd love to do a book with Homicide." And so, bitch, there's Homicide. So I'm like, "Hey, brother," and
I totally missed him too. Like, I realized I saw you like shared a picture and a couple other people. I'm like, shit, Homicide was there. I didn't even realize it. Like, I love to have met Homicide.
Angel just brought him over to the table to introduce him. I was like, thanks, brother. I appreciate that. So yeah, there's a lot of folks, I've been lucky because, again, meeting people, the networking thing is everything. And this is what I've always told authors. especially the first time authors and stuff, because I've been publishing, for 3 years now, and they'll ask me, they're like, oh, when we go to shows, this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like, look, the only thing that you can't control at a convention is who shows up. Unfortunately, you have no control over that, but use every opportunity you get to pitch yourself to people, talk to your neighbors who are at the tables, because you never know who you're going to meet, and you never know what it might lead to in the future. I met, when I was doing horror conventions, hell, even before that, when I was doing toy conventions, I met some great folks who to this day I still work with, because they're just extremely talented individuals, and we always find stuff to get into together. So, always talk to, and that's what I tell everybody. If you're going to a convention, talk to everybody, everybody, because you never know. The person that you talk to might be like, oh, well, I'm not interested, but reach out to this guy because I know he is. So that's my advice to all the writers and vendors. And if you're out doing a convention scene this year, talk to everybody, because collaborations happen all the time. You just have to be, willing to take that first step forward. And I love getting creative people together in a room, because inevitably something amazing comes out of it. So
absolutely.
We'll return after these messages.
Hey guys, Ray Russell here, curator of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, inviting you guys to listen to many of the programs here as part of the WrestleCopia brand, including, but not limited to, the Wrestling Memory Grenade, currently covering the 1988 and the WWF project. You can also listen to the Regional Wrestling Podcast, where we talk the territories. You can also listen to the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop. But that's not all. You can also check out the Puro Wrestling Academy with the professor of Puro Resu, Mr. Dan Ginnity. Dan and I go back in time and cover the history of Japanese professional wrestling in the English language. And you can listen to all of those shows and more, all part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, located over at WrestleCopia.com. That's WrestleCopia.com, and anywhere your podcast streaming needs are met. So if you're looking to support that next up-and-coming podcast brand, please consider making it WrestleCopia.
Hey, it's Bob Smith, and guess what? The Outdated Wrestling Hour is now part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. But hey, no fear, you're still going to hear the unique guests, comedy, music, authors, journalists, funny people. Who knows who's going to end up on the Outdated Wrestling Hour? Remember, it's all new and all old. So check it out in the WrestleCopia Podcast Network and wherever you get your podcasts. Listen if you know what's good for you.
Hey guys, this is Wolfie D from PG-13. Check out my podcast, Live and in Color with Wolfie D, every Monday at noon. We're talking Memphis, we're talking ECW, WCW, WWF, everywhere that I've been. We even have some great guests, some Hall of Famers on the show with us. Every Monday at noon, Live and in Color with Wolfie D.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling, the podcast that's based on the old school, but can still help you find the good stuff from today. Jimmy Street and the Plastic Chic, Jared, are the undisputed tag team champions of the wrestling podcast world. From thought-provoking topics to superstar interviews to action figure expertise. This team does it all, and all they ask is, give me back my pro wrestling! Every other Thursday, wherever you listen to podcasts.
That's a great point, because you may meet somebody and be like, yeah, I've already done a book. But I was talking to so-and-so the other day, and they said they want to do a book. And now
exactly.
Boom,
and now have them give me a call. I'm happy. It's funny because I was a horror guy for so long, and now I'm kind of like, well, if I'm the guy that the wrestlers go to get their books done, I'm okay with that. I'm fine.
Yeah.
That'll be fine. ECW press, it worked for them. They do all right. So, for me, I'm fortunate, I'm very grateful. I love talking to the guys and girls because their stories are so unique. Every single person that I've talked to, the stories are so unique, and they love what they do, or they, and they live the business. And I mean, sometimes that's good, sometimes it's not so good.
Yeah.
But they are passionate about what they do, and they love what they do, and that passion is inspiring. So when I sit down and I start talking to people and we start talking about their lives and their careers and everything, it energizes me, and it makes me want to, put together the best team of folks so we can, because I want all of the authors that we work with to be able to stand next to their book at a table and be like, this is my book.
Yeah.
Because it is, the stories, the words, the language, that's all from the talent. My writers, you and Doug did the book on Eddie.
Yeah.
It's their story, so I don't like changing people's words when I don't have to. I don't like editing things. I think that if you tell me a story and you're like, I want this story in, I don't want that story in. Hey, it's your book. You tell me what you want it to say, and I will make sure that's what it says. So, I'm not a gotcha guy. I'm not let's write these conspiracy laden books about this, that, and the other thing. Why did Macho Man leave whatever.
Yeah.
That's not me. There's plenty of that nonsense in the business already. That's not what it needs. What it needs is a place where the wrestlers can go and we can save their stories, and we can make sure that, like, I'm thrilled that Sabu's book came out before he passed.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled that he got the opportunity to see that happen. Because I haven't read it yet. I wish I had time to read as many things as I'd like to have time to read.
You and me both.
The fact that it happened before he passed, I was glad to see that. I mean, it came as a surprise to all of us because we just saw him 2 weeks ago.
Yes, that's what was so crazy.
Yeah.
We just seen him. He seemed healthy as healthy as Sabu can be with all the he took, but in good spirits.
Yeah,
we hung out with him at the hotel, and he seemed genuinely happy to be there and see everybody. And I've never been so shocked by a headline. Really. There's a time that I told a couple people this, and I don't mean this bad, but like I told Doug, I was like, there's a time I would have never been surprised to wake up and see that headline because, he'd been through some things, but to have just seen him and get a good feel for it, like, Sabu's in a good place, man. That's awesome. And then to read that, like, holy shit, what happened?
Yeah, I was blown away when I saw that. But like, again, his book got out, and it's doing very well from what I hear. It's on the rise.
I have it, and I've got a stack of books because now I spend so much time doing podcasts and writing things because I've got Sabu's book and the Buddy Rogers book and Frankie Kane and all these different ones in there, and I want to read them. I got
I got you. Gary's book,
Gary's, and freaking Joel Goodhart's. I bought it while I was there, and I'm like, I'll get there eventually. But man, you get the opportunity to facilitate something really cool because, like, to sit in front of this computer and type and be on the phone with Doug and sending things back and forth with him and his wife and going back and forth on all this stuff, and then to be there in Philadelphia for that first time and hold that book in my hand and flip through it. And I stand there and take the picture together, holding the book up. You can't describe that feeling. It's such a fulfilling moment. You know what I mean? And that might sound silly to some people who can't understand that. But if you've ever done anything like that, it's really cool. And so for you to get the opportunity to see that happen again and again, you have to give people that. That's a really cool thing, man. I like it.
Even to this day, when I get a proof in from a book that we've put out, I'm still like, I open that envelope or I open that box and I take that book out and I'm just like, the author created this by the sheer force of will. And I took their words and I crafted them into this thing. And even just as the publisher now, it's still an amazing feeling for me. To see that happen and to see people's books succeed and to see reviews and for people to be like, oh, I read this book and it was amazing. We really loved this aspect or that aspect. And it's funny because as a publisher, nobody wants to meet me. I'm just the guy behind the scene. I'm the man behind the curtain. Nobody's lining up to meet me. I'm an author, but I'm not that important of an author. But the nice part about it now is with like the wrestling books and stuff, you guys will be there. So, it's like, I had people like, is like when we were selling the book, you're like, is Doug signing the book? I'm like, yeah, it's right there. Yeah. I don't know. You're like, well, do you know how much it is? I'm like, you'd have to ask Doug. That's not my business. I don't know. I'm like, this is what the book cost. I know that. So, if you buy the book, I don't know what he's going to charge you to sign it. That's between y'all. That's,
I told Doug, I was like,
Paul, and that's between y'all.
I was like, this is actually a really cool setup. I think because typically you'd have people over here trying to beg you for free books and barter with you and shit. I'm like, but you're able to go, hey man, the publisher's got them. You got to buy them from him. Yep. And then they go to you and you're like, you want it signed? You got to go talk to him. And so y'all are able to kind of bat them back and forth. And
Absolutely.
You don't have to worry about people trying to bum shit off. Because my God, I know you know better than anybody.
I know they will.
You write a damn book and everybody comes out of the woodwork and everybody wants one for free. Yeah. I got these freaking podcast people message me going, hey man, and I've been doing podcasts for years and I've interviewed a lot of authors. It never even occurred to me to do this, but I've had 4 people this week go, hey man, would love to have you on my podcast to promote your book. And I was like, sure, man, that'd be great. And then they go, well, can you send me a free copy so I can read it beforehand? I'm like, no. I'm like, well, I'm trying to help you out. I'm like, if you want to help me out, buy the damn book.
Buy the fucking book. Yes.
Like, you're not helping me. Like I've got, you've got 122 subscribers to your YouTube channel. I got like 7,000. I don't know who's helping who here, but thanks anyway.
Now, if you want to buy a copy, hey, great, then sure. But everybody, it's like these things cost money, guys. Not only that, but it costs money to ship them, and the shipping sometimes costs more than the damn book. What the cost of the book is to me. So, but nothing I can do about that. That's Uncle Sam, and
Yeah, that's just the way it goes. But Eddie was Doug and Eddie were very close, and Doug's wanted to do this for a long time. And I actually, before I knew Doug, started on a book about Eddie like 15 years ago. Nice. And had talked to his parents. Doug was off in Japan. He was wrestling all the time. I couldn't really pin him down, but I talked to Miss Peggy and Mr. Tommy and interviewed them and got a lot of quotes from them and talked to a bunch of different people. And then I went through a divorce. And I put the project aside, and then I just never came back to it. And then last year, me and Doug met and started this podcast, and then we got to talking about a book. And I was like, I started working on one. And he's like, I've kind of worked on one off and on too. He's like, well, what if we teamed up? And then around that same time, he meets you, and all this perfect storm happens. And I've told some people, I'm like, I'm glad I didn't go ahead and do it by myself, because there's all these things there was no way I could have known without hearing it from Doug. But it was very important to Doug, over the years, is like, because me and him talked about this while we're doing the books, like, books outlive us all. Yep. Like, this, when we do this, we want to make sure we want everything in there that we want people to know about Eddie, because this will be around forever. Right. And this will be some people's only knowledge of him as they discover this book. He was before their time. Sure. And this book will be what they know about him. So, I'm really glad that this was the first one, that we were able to do, because to me, it was the one that,
you guys knocked it out of the park.
Done. So
you did it. You sent me an amazing manuscript. It was a joy to work on it. Because, I could feel the passion. I could feel the love. I could feel, I don't have a brother, so I don't, I have a sister and she's great. Love her to death, but I understand it's a different relationship with brothers. And, I could feel that in the words of the book.
And that's something me and him could relate to, because I had an older brother that committed suicide like back in 1991, a half brother that we were pretty close. And then this past year, last January, my younger brother, who was 9 years younger than me, who had 3 kids and a wife, just passed away abruptly of a heart attack. He wasn't even fat like me. He was like a healthy dude and just had a heart attack and passed away. But we almost had, almost the same age difference between me and him as there was between Doug and Eddie, and they died like a few days apart as far as like the actual day they died. I mean, years apart, obviously, but days apart. So, so we were able to kind of relate on that level, talking about, going through and talking about the stories and everything. So that kind of added to it. So I don't know. I'm looking forward to all these great projects. Now, another name you mentioned a moment ago, you mentioned Wolfe D, and that's a guy that me and Doug know. Tommy knows. Doug and Tommy know really well. Tell me a little bit about that project.
Wolfie's great. He we reached out to him about doing a book, and he had told me he's an artist. And he talked to you. He said, he's like, I've thought about it over the years. And one of the things that I've been told by everybody that I've worked with so far is this format works really well for them because they're not writers. They're not going to sit there and peck out, a book on a key. That's not, and that's fine. Not everybody is, and that's fine. Yeah. So, but they've, what we do is, we schedule the time, we sit down, we talk, it's a casual conversation, kind of a leading interview, but not like, oh no, this way, that, just, we let the conversation go where it's going to go. Wolfie came along, and him and I like Wolfie. He's a trip. He told me he's had some great stories. He talks a bit about JC. He talks a bit about the TNA run. He introduced me to Jim Mitchell, who's contributing a little something for the book. Jeff Jarrett's written the foreword for the book. Oh, nice. So it's been very cool. And Wolfie and I have talked about doing a couple things together. I think he's going to paint a hubcap for me. Cool. So, because what I want to do at some point this year is I want to have an auction, kind of raise money for, some kind of charity or fundraiser or, something along those lines. Maybe something that we can do to help one of the boys, who are in the street, like with Brian Knobs' situation. That pisses me off so much because we can't do a book with him because he's under a Legends contract. But the poor guy's in the hospital about to lose his foot. Where's the company then? They don't care. They don't give a shit. So to me, that aggravates the shit out of me because it's like, if you're going to prevent him from taking avenues that can make him money, because I'm sure people would love a book about the Nasty Boys.
Oh my God. Can you imagine the stories?
Knobs and Savage are fucking crazy. So, I'm sure people would love a book about them, but the WWF locks these guys down, and then doesn't do anything with them. That's the thing that kills me.
No, they throw them in a video game or some shit. And, they basically just tie them up where they can't go do stuff that they don't want them to do.
Right. Which is just, to me, that's ridiculous. It's like, and I don't know what they pay the contracts. I don't know, I don't know any real details on it. Although it's an inconvenience. That's all I know. So Wolfie's been great. We've wrapped up the recording sessions. And right now it is sitting in the pile of waiting for an author to pick up the project.
I would love to. Projects are piling up though, so
I know. I'm going to keep you busy, man. I'm telling you, we got a lot happening. And
that's definitely one I would take a special interest in.
All right.
I've followed Wolfie's entire career from the day he walked into Memphis and so forth. So
I can we can make that arrangement. That's not a problem at all. So I think that it's been a great experience, and every day I'm talking to new people. Jim Mitchell's great. I'm trying to get back in touch with Gangrel after clearing up a bit of a mess there. So there's a lot happening. There's a lot that's going to be happening. And my production company just finished its first film. So we're out shopping distribution for that. And I'm a very busy person, but I love what I do. And I love the chance. I love the fact that every day it's like, oh, today I started one day a couple of weeks ago. The first call I had in the morning was with a very religious person. I'm not going to get into details. She's a very, very religious person. And then my last call of the day was with Rip Rogers. Now, I don't know if you've ever talked to Rip, but Rip swears more than any 3 human beings I've ever met in my entire life. I think Rip's a little crazy, but I love him. The dude is great.
I've heard people describe a Rip as he uses the word fuck like a comma.
He does. He really does. And I swear a lot, but Rip's got me fucking beat. I'll tell you that, man. It's crazy. But Rip's great. I've been having a grand old time talking to him. He's got some amazing stories.
Yes.
You know, the nice thing about this for me is I've talked to Bill and Rip, that generation. I talked to Wolfe and Gary and Doug and, you know, that generation. Yeah. I'm working on a book with Mike Knox. I'm working on a book with, we're going to do a book, probably going to end up doing something with Sin. So it's like all the different generations of workers, which is great because it also has been, it's been laying out like a path. Like I see how the business has changed because of the stories that these guys are telling me. Yeah. So that's been, for me, that's been the most remarkable part is getting really into the history of, you know, Memphis and really getting into, you know, the sportatorium and, you know, the deep dives into that stuff by people who were actually there in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s, you know. So that for me, that's been the most exciting part because I love wrestling. I've been a wrestling fan since I was 8 years old. You know, I remember watching the first WrestleMania on pay-per-view, actually, where we lived. So that was kind of crazy. So, you know, this has been something I've been passionate about my whole life. So if I get to help the boys, you know, retain their legacy and make them money at the same time, that's what I'm going to do. I want to give back to the people who gave so much to me when I was a young, you know, I mean, still to this day, I love wrestling, but you know, these are the guys I grew up watching. So for me, it's like, you know, like I wish, you know, and the other thing for me, the important part is preserving them because so many of them have already left us. You know, like I talked
There's so many you can think back and go, God, I wish we could have got a book on them. You know, their stories are lost, you know.
Everybody I talk to has a great Kurt Hennig story. Every single person has told me a great Kurt Hennig story. I've heard some amazing stories about Andre. I've heard some amazing stories about the Dynamite Kid. I like, you know, all of these people. I mean,
Rick Rude.
Rick Rude. Yeah. So, you know, it's been a very entertaining experience for me because I get to learn more about this thing that I've loved my whole life. And I was never going to be in the business. When I was 22, I already had 2 bad knees and a fucked up shoulder. So I went to a wrestling school. A friend of mine was going to a wrestling school. I went down one night with him, and the trainer's like, "Hey man, I'm 6'4". I was probably about 240 pounds at that point. So he was like, "Man, you're a beast. You want to get in the ring?" I'm like, "Sorry, bro." I said, "I'm already beat up. I'm already so beat up. It's like I've been in the business for 5 years already. Yeah. So no, my body can't take it. Sorry." But here I am now at 49. And I get to work with some great people, and I get to meet some amazingly talented people like yourself. And we're going to go ahead and you know, fire this thing up and get these books out and celebrate what we love. So,
hell yeah, man! I mean, you're serving a lot of purposes. You're helping the boys. You're helping preserve the history of the business and tell that story. And wrestling fans really love getting to see the other side of it. And as you pointed out earlier, the thing that I think is important that I really want wrestling fans to understand is these guys are people. Like there's a lot of sacrifices that were made to do the things they've done. Absolutely. You know, and people need to know that. People need to know the things a lot of these guys went through, the injuries they've suffered, and
physical, you know, emotional, financial. Yes. I mean, nobody was watching out for some, you know, these guys back then. You know, some of these guys are scraping by, you know, on Legends contracts for whatever minimal amount of money that, you know. So for me, it's important, you know, and I don't these folks, these guys lived this life, they lived this business. I believe that they should have some dignity. So, for me, that's one of the primary purposes is telling these stories, is to be like, these men and women, they put it all on the line for you every time they went out into the ring. And that's, you have to respect that. Love them or hate them, you have to respect that.
And the great thing is, like you were talking about a moment ago, as all these projects start to come together, when fans come to, THC Ringside online, regardless of their age or the generation that they grew up watching, there's going to be something for everybody. Exactly. Like I said, there's the Bill Eadie, Tommy Rich generation, and then, like I said, then there's the Wolfe and the Dougs, and then this Sin Bodies, and all the down the line is going to run the whole gamut. And it's just, as you mentioned names, that keep spreading, the net keeps spreading wider and wider. So
I'm hoping to do a book with Jim Mitchell, a full book.
Man, that's going to be wild.
I really want to do a book with Gangrel. I think David had a fascinating life and career.
Yes.
So I really want to work with him this year. For anybody who is out there, who has been in the business, who has lived that life and has those stories, hit us up, man. There's no, if you were an undercard guy or you were a main eventer, doesn't matter to me, because even the enhancement talent, they have stories. Yeah. You're telling me Steve Lombardi doesn't have stories? God almighty, the Brooklyn Brawlers he's got stories for decades. So, was second longest reigning employee in the company behind Howard Finkel, I think.
Yeah.
So, he was there forever. Guys, if you're out there and you want to talk about doing a book, you want to, get some basic information, you can always hit us up. I'm on Facebook under Christopher Pelton. I'm on Instagram under THC Dog 420. You can reach me at thcringside.com. thclimitless.com is the parent company. And we're going to be out and about this year. I'm going to try to get out to as many shows as possible and bring these books with us and let people know, let them experience what it's like, what it's like to be Eddie Gilbert, let them understand Eddie's life, let them understand Gary's life or Bill's life. To me, that's the goal. So.
Well,
and Gene, I'm thrilled to have you on the team, man. I love what you did with this book, and I can't wait to work with you on the next one.
Well, man, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, and thanks for taking the time to talk with us here tonight, man. It's been super interesting. It's flown by. And,
yeah, man. Anytime, brother. I'm around. I'm always working. So,
but yeah, man. If you're a wrestler and you're watching this, you're like, man, I want to get in on this. Hit up Chris, or you can hit me up. I will get you in touch with Chris.
Absolutely. Gene's
I've only been on the team for a couple of days, and I'm already recruiting people.
Yeah, Gene's on Team THC, so hit us up, folks. We'll get out some great books for you.
Well, all right. Thanks, Chris, and
of
course we'll be talking again real soon. And thank you all for checking out another episode of Retro Wrestling with Gene Jackson.
Peace.
Hey everybody, Gene Jackson here, inviting you to check out the Retro Wrestling Review, where each week I'm joined by some great co-hosts who help me review classic episodes of USWA Championship Wrestling, and right now we are doing week-by-week reviews of 1993. But we don't just do reviews, sometimes we get a chance to interview some of the people who were there and lived it, plus do watch-alongs. It's a lot of fun, so check out new episodes that drop every Wednesday at WrestleCopia.com. And to find links to everything associated to the podcast, you can go to USWApodcast.com.